We just entered the strongest buyer's market in over a decade, and Redfin recently reported that we have 47% more sellers than buyers, and most sellers are still listing like it's 2021. That's why smart buyers are landing an average discount of 7.9% off, with 25% of buyers getting a discount over 10%. In the next few minutes, I'll show you where these discounts are hiding, why condos are leading at 8.1%, how oversupply flipped the script, and the simple negotiation line that aligns with data. If you want a playbook on how to turn your 2026 home purchase into a double-digit discount, well, you've come to the right place. Here's a question you might be asking. If sellers outnumber buyers by a record margin, why are so many listings still priced like a bidding war will start tomorrow? The truth is, the market flipped practically overnight, and a lot of sellers didn't get the memo. Here's the bottom line. When the pool of buyers thins out, overpricing becomes an expensive mistake, and Redfin reports that there were 47% more sellers than buyers in 2025. That's not a small tilt. That's a structural shift into the strongest buyer's market we've seen in years. And with that spread, the advantage moves to the person writing the offer, not the one planning the yard sign. More supply means buyers can walk away, and walking away is power, but many sellers are still anchoring to 2021 prices. When they initially list, they price high, hoping that rates won't matter and demand will magically appear. And the truth is, well, it hasn't. In fact, mortgage costs rose, budgets tightened, and the urgency to overbid has long since faded. So what happens is listings are now sitting longer. Days on market is going up, and when time on market lingers, the inevitable next step is a price cut. Then come concessions, including closing cost credits, repair money, and even rate buydowns to keep the deal alive. And Redfin's MLS data backs it up. The gap between list price and sales price is the widest it's been since 2012. That's the data way of saying sellers start out on crack and, well, end up taking a Xanax. The bottom line is the path is predictable. When you overprice, all you do is invite little to no showings, and by week 3, you see your first price cut, then another, and by the second or third month, the seller starts to face the reality, which is that the market has flipped. Take a metro like Denver, for example, with heavy supply, and new listings pile up faster than pending sales, and the stale listings with no showings tell the complete story. You'll see a property sit with 3 or more price reductions before the first serious offer appears, and even then the offer includes credit for repairs as well as a closing cost ask, and that's not a one-off, that's the playbook we're dealing with in an oversupplied market. And when you look at the difference this outcome creates compared to 2021 and 2022, the share of buyers paying above list fell to 22.8%. Meanwhile, 62% now pay below list price, which is the highest it's been since 2019. That means we have a majority of buyers getting a discount with proof in the contracts as well as which sales are closing. And here's how the math works in real life. You see, more options lets buyers cherry pick, because if a home lacks updates or needs a roof or sits near a noisy street, it trades on a price discount. And if the seller won't budge, well, the buyer moves on because there's another candidate a mile away. And that power of choice is what gives buyers control in the market. You see, choices create patience, and patience creates leverage, and leverage creates discounts. And this imbalance is why the typical below list discount sits at 7.9%, and why 1 in 4 buyers land a discount of 10% or more. You see, sellers can ask for yesterday's prices, but the market will pay today's. But this isn't true in all segments and all markets, so next we'll look at where we're seeing the deepest price cuts and why they're happening. What if the largest discounts are actually already baked into the building before you even write an offer? Well, that's the story with condos right now, because the truth is the costs you can't see on tour are doing the heavy lifting when it comes time to negotiate. And sellers know this the second that you ask for the last 12 months of HOA minutes and the current insurance binders, because here's the bottom line. Condo buyers who pay below list are averaging an 8.1% discount, which tops single-family residences and townhomes by a small margin, but it's the first time since 2014 that condos lead the pack on discounts. And it's not by some random chance. You see, ownership costs have jumped faster than prices could adjust, so prices are now playing catch up. Why are discounts bigger? Well, with HOA dues rising, building insurance spiking, and special assessments popping up, buyers are being hit with surprise premiums that are leaving sellers with no other option but to drop prices. This is because line items like an HOA fee hit monthly affordability, which affects DTI and lender approval. And here's what the math looks like when you actually add it up. If you add $500 to a monthly HOA at a 6% mortgage rate, that's like adding roughly $60,000 to $70,000 to the loan from a payment perspective, and most buyers don't have that room in their approval, and since lenders cap the debt to income ratio, buyers simply cannot afford it, so sellers have to adjust. And this isn't some theory, this is what showed up in the contracts throughout 2025, and the trend is likely to continue into this year. You see, last year 68% of condo buyers paid below list, which was the highest share among property types, above single family residences at 61% and townhouses at 60%. And this tells you that this isn't a one-off, this is how home sellers are having to cope in 2026. Here's an example. Take a mid-rise where the roof and elevator both need work. The HOA announces a special assessment, but sellers ignore it and try to hold a pandemic-era list price. Well, the buyers counter with a lower price, and they ask for a credit to cover year one cost. They finally agree on price after the second or third reduction, plus credits for the assessment, and in some states, insurance volatility makes this contrast even bigger. You see, premiums in disaster-prone regions were hit the hardest. This is places like Florida or Texas, which have the highest exposure to hurricanes or densely wooded areas with high fire risk. As a result, carriers tighten coverage, deductibles shoot up, and some lenders balk unless the policy meets their needs. And the truth is, this is as simple as bringing this up in the closing argument by asking for a 10% discount given the increase in HOA costs as well as the increase in insurance costs, and most sellers are agreeing. And this is not being overly aggressive. You're pricing in the increased costs and therefore lower values that are already well documented. So yeah, condos, they're the most negotiable right now because the fixed costs are obvious and they're rising, and sellers can't hide them and buyers cannot ignore them. And when the costs move up, the only way to resolve it is for prices to move down in order for them to actually sell. That's how you use the market data to make money, not just quote it. And next, we'll map out where those discounts stretch into the double digits and where a few pockets of housing markets are surprisingly still trading at a premium even with the same macroeconomic backdrop. But before we do that, if you're enjoying this content so far, please hit the like button for the algorithm and consider subscribing to the channel if you found this content helpful. It's a free way you can show support and it's much appreciated. Two cities, same interest rate, but in one, buyers will shave off 10% and in the other, they still pay over asking. Why? Well, here's the bottom line. Discounts are clustering and the map explains your leverage. You see, Redfin's 2025 data shows that West Palm Beach at the front with a typical 10.9% discount below list price, while Detroit and Fort Lauderdale sit closer to 10%. Pittsburgh lands at 9.9%, while Miami comes in at just under 9.8%. And these aren't one-off scenarios. They are a pattern tied to high supply and rising carrying costs like insurance and HOA fees that sellers can't ignore. And here's the twist. A few metros are actually still trading at a premium. I know it's hard to believe, but San Francisco right now posted an average price of 3.8% over asking. So in the Bay Area, that's kind of the playbook right now. List low, get a little bit of activity, and let a tight inventory market drive the final number. When we look at Newark, New Jersey, that metro was averaging over 3.1%, and San Jose was 2.3% over asking. The truth is that right now it's less about rates and it's more about how listings are priced and how scarce true move-in ready inventory can be in a few niche markets. And if you're asking why the split, well, the truth is that local inventory amounts, insurance costs, and demand are all the key drivers right now. And Florida's pipeline of new construction created a glut of inventory. And at the same time, insurance and HOA costs skyrocketed in these markets. Sellers face higher carrying costs, and this means a larger pool of options for buyers. And well, that combo pushes prices down fast because people have options to choose from. But when you contrast this with metros that have tighter inventory or deliberate underpricing tactics, and well, you remove any room to negotiate. And the truth is that nationally, on average, 62% of buyers paid below list in 2025, but your odds shift dramatically depending on the metro. West Palm Beach had almost 88% closing under list price. That means almost 9 out of 10 homes were well under asking price, while Detroit saw 53% under list, and Fort Lauderdale was also hit hard with 87% of homes closing with a significant discount. That means if you're buying a home in Florida right now, 9 out of 10 homes are selling at a discount. And the truth is that in today's market, a single strategy won't work everywhere. You need a local read on inventory, you need to look at days on market, and how many offers a typical listing gets in its first week. So let's compare how this plays out in actual terms. In West Palm Beach, a condo buyer expects double-digit room plus credits for insurance costs or HOA spikes. Plus, repair credits and rate buydowns are on the negotiating table early. However, if you look at Seattle, the profile is completely different. A townhome might see a 5.7% discount when it sells below asking price, which was the lowest among large metros for townhomes. So in this instance, you would lean into inspection findings as well as finding targeted credits versus a giant slash off list price. So what does this all mean in terms of numbers? Well, when it comes to median price homes, here's how the data actually pans out. Redfin's median discount was calculated at over $31,000 off a typical list price based on the national average, which is a 7.9% cut applied to a $399,000 median list price. If you lead with that and ask for credits for repairs, and you also look at assessments as well as a rate buy down in order to reduce your monthly payment, the truth is that when you anchor the discount to facts, meaning the comps of similar homes sold in the area, as well as the higher monthly costs, a double-digit request in an oversupplied metro like Florida or Denver is actually very reasonable, which is why smart sellers are taking those offers. But here's the bottom line. The discount is real because of basic supply and demand economics. Too much supply, prices come down. Limited inventory, and well, prices go up. And a lot of sellers still haven't adjusted to what the market is actually doing. But just as sassy Jew Ben Shapiro says, unfortunately, facts don't care about your feelings. And this time, the data backs it up because 2025 delivered the biggest below list price cuts in over 13 years, with a typical buyer saving 8% and over $31,000 off a median list price home of $399,000. And 1 in 4 buyers were able to get discounts that cleared over 10%. So here's how you use this information to save money on your home purchase. Depending on your market, lead with a 10% ask, subject to comps of similar properties in the area. And if it's in an HOA, account for higher HOA costs as well as insurance costs next. And lastly, request credits for repairs or a rate buy down at closing. So I hope you found this content helpful. And if you want to know how you can work with me in the Denver Metro or Southern California, there's a link in the description on how you can get in touch. And if you want to know how to determine whether or not your market makes sense to purchase in using one of the age-old equations of renting versus buying, there's a video popping up on the screen right now that you can check out, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.